complex at Dahan, Kalaran, that Budh Singh Daha has created, one of the sort of signature diaspora philanthropy projects in Punjab. And I want to talk about both the ways in which he innovated in the way in which Pardesi Sikh philanthropy took place, and also the challenges that he faced and the lessons that we can learn from that case. So this is really a follow-up to the workshop volume on Sikh diaspora philanthropy in Punjab that my colleagues Darshan Tatla and Mandeep Kaur and I are now working on a life history of Budh Singh Daha, who is one of the Sikh diaspora philanthropists whose undertakings helped inspire our initial research project in 2005-2006, who participated in the international workshop that we held in 2006, and whose signature project was the subject of Margaret Walton Roberts' contributions to our volume. In 1979, after 20 years in Canada, where he had become a Canadian citizen, a successful building contractor, and a leader of the British Columbia Sikh community, Budh Singh Daha returned to India with a vision of bringing healthcare and female education to underserved rural region around his natal village in Punjab. Over the next 25 years, under Budh Singh's leadership as the founder-president, the medical and educational complex at Dahan Kalaran, near Bunga City, as many of you know, on the highway between Chandigarh and Phagwara, through his Guru Nanak Mission Medical and Educational Trust, became one of the best-known diaspora philanthropy projects. I don't think we need the pictures now. I think it's too late. I don't think... We don't need it. No, too late, too late. It's fine. We don't need it. The complex at Dahan Kalaran became one of the most best-known diaspora philanthropy projects in Punjab, especially as a consequence of the extensive Sikh diaspora funding base. Many of you may have been hit up by Budh Singh for money to contribute to his project over the years, but also for its transnational partnerships in the late 1990s and the early 2000s with the University of British Columbia School of Nursing and the Canadian International Development Agency, CIDA. Today, the Trust runs a 250-bed multi-specialty hospital, a trauma center, a drug de-addiction center, a nursing school and nursing college, an elementary and senior secondary school, various hostels and administrative buildings, a bank, a gurdwara, a guest house called UBC Canada House. In addition, the Trust has recently signed an agreement with Baba Farid University of Health Sciences to add a medical college, a long-championed goal of Budh Singh. Budh Singh himself has been recognized by academics in Canada with an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree, by villagers in Punjab with the honorific title Babaji, and by the Premier of British Columbia with a public citation for his life's work in social welfare. In 2009, Budh Singh was unceremoniously replaced as president of the Trust, but at nearly 89 years of age, he's busily at work on a newly established Guru Nanak Mission International Charitable Trust, seeking to replicate his success by building a hospital in a yet poorer area near Gurshankar. For the purposes of this conference and in recognition of the limited time we have here, I thought I would use the case study of Budh Singh's project at Dahan Kalaran as a way of talking more generally about Sikh diaspora philanthropy in the building of Punjab. In particular, I propose to highlight both the ways that Budh Singh's project both broke new ground in how Sikh diaspora philanthropy has been conducted, and the ways in which his experience reflects certain challenges facing diaspora philanthropy in Punjab. One of the first things to note about Budh Singh's project at Dahan Kalaran is that it was innovative and on a number of scores rather broke the mold of how Sikhs in the diaspora have given philanthropically to Punjab. First of all, it did not raise funds through a gurdwara or a Panthic organization. It raised money directly for health and education projects. It relied on funds raised primarily abroad from a wide donor base through a trust that was FCRA registered, and it developed transnational partnerships with international organizations. As J.P. Singh has written, the Gurdwara has long been the pivot around which Sikh giving has been organized, since gifts to the gurus, as dan or seva, are meritorious. And thus Sikh diaspora donors over the past 130-odd years have commonly socialized their charitable giving, including for some tithing dasvand, by directing it through religious channels, via direct donations at gurdwaras, such as Golden Temple or historic gurdwaras or even village gurdwaras, or in response to public appeals by organizations like Chief Khalsa Diwan or SGPC, or at the request of visiting religious personages, babas and sants, as they travel around. Thus, Budh Singh's ultimately successful efforts to convince other diasporan Sikhs to give directly to him for the trust social development objectives in Punjab had to overcome initial suspicions about whether this was truly selfless humanitarian endeavor. Was this really a form of nishkam seva? Or was it primarily a means of self-enrichment on his part or self-aggrandizement? In a related vein, giving directly for village health and education projects, rather than giving to religious institutions, was at the time not common. As Satnam Chana's 2 surveys of diaspora philanthropy in the Doaba region of Punjab that were discussed in our book suggest, at the time that Budh Singh began his project in the early 1980s, the vast majority of diaspora philanthropy in the area was going toward building, reconstructing, and servicing gurdwaras and other religious places. It's only been over the past 2 decades, influenced by the example of projects like that at Dazanbari, that Sikh diaspora philanthropy in rural villages has moved beyond giving mainly for religious places to giving directly for social development purposes, such as educational and healthcare. Another notable feature of Budh Singh's project was the fact that it relied on an extensive donor base in Punjab, but especially in the diaspora. Budh Singh, despite his success as a contractor in British Columbia, was not himself a wealthy man, and he was certainly not in a position to fund the project out of his own resources. In fact, he was dependent on land donated to the cause by the panchayats of Dahang, Kalaran villages, and he struggled for many years to raise the funds to build the hospital and the schools that he had envisioned. But he was a determined fundraiser who traveled the globe an average of 2 times a year, visiting Sikh communities abroad to raise funds from family, village, ilaqua, political and religious networks that he had. Much of the diaspora philanthropy in Punjab has been one-off contributions to regild the village gurdwara, to build the village gate, to fund a kabaddi tournament or an eye camp. Relative to other places with large diaspora populations, Punjab does not have many hometown associations organized for collective action in the homeland. It's notable of the places that have diaspora philanthropy, how few hometown associations have been created in Punjab. Budh Singh's success at Dazanbari has, in the context of competitive philanthropy in Punjab, stimulated others in the diaspora to organize collective endeavors on behalf of rural villages rather than to depend upon the largesse of a single wealthy donor or to wait for the state to come to the rescue. As many as have observed, Punjab itself has relatively few charitable organizations registered under the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act. And among those that are registered, Sikh organizations have been particularly unrepresented. Historic patterns of Sikh giving through gurdwaras or individually funded one-off projects and the long-standing Sikh wariness of entanglements with the state might help explain this. But Budh Singh, dependent as he was on donations from abroad, had to deal with the Indian bureaucracy, especially as he developed partner tax-exempt funding organizations in the UK, International Akal Mission, in Canada, the Canada India Education Society, and in USA, Guru Nanak Mission Education Charitable Society. And his willingness to get the trust registered has helped other Sikh diaspora philanthropists overcome their qualms about registering their charitable organizations, and even in recent years has led some to accept matching funds from the government of Punjab for state-approved diaspora-funded village development projects, a move that Budh Singh himself resisted. Finally, the collaborations that Guru Nanak Trust developed with international partners, in particular with the University of British Columbia School of Nursing, which supplied curricula and facilitated student-faculty exchanges, with the Canadian International Development Agency, which funded a primary healthcare project in surrounding villages, and with the North American Sikh Medical and Dental Association, which provided volunteer medical staff, have been truly path-breaking. As Margaret Walton Roberts details in her chapter in our book, it was the Canadian affiliate, CEAS, with its predominantly 1.5 and 2.0 generation Punjabi Canadian leadership, including Budh Singh's son Barj Dahan, that actually initiated and oversaw these collaborations. Collaborations that she notes operated as a transformative agent in the development of the trust. And certainly the prestige of these international links, plus the resources made available through them, have meant that other Sikh diaspora philanthropists have followed the trust lead in seeking out support from international partner organizations. However, the ultimate unraveling of these transnational collaborations, which were strong in the 1990s and the early 2000s, but then which were later dissolved, and Budh Singh's recent dismissal from the trust also reveals some of the challenges and limitations that still haunt Sikh diaspora philanthropic projects in Punjab. In particular, Budh Singh's experience at the trust cast light on the challenges for Sikh diaspora philanthropy as a consequence of factionalism within organizations, of competitive gifting among donors, of the continued preference for conspicuous philanthropy, of contending management models, and of endemic patriarchal politics. It's a common observation of Punjabi organizations, especially those run by Jat Sikhs, have been prone to factionalism, whether in Punjab or in the diaspora. Notions of Izzat and Sadari have meant that Jat Sikh-run organizations tend to organize politically into contending factions. The original trustees of Guru Nanak Trust came largely from the neighboring villages of Dahan and Kalaran, and from early on, the trustees from Kalaran chafed at being eclipsed by Budh Singh Dahan from Dahan, the smaller and poorer of the two villages. However, as long as Budh Singh was successfully building the complex and sustaining it through prodigious fundraising and international connections, the opposing faction was not in a position to challenge his leadership. But once an endowment had been established and opportunity presented itself, opposing faction was able to muster the votes to oust Budh Singh from his position of leadership. While it's still too early to tell how the trust will survive the departure of its visionary founder, president, and chief fundraiser, we know that factional tensions and succession battles within other diaspora-inspired charitable organizations in Punjab have often destroyed these organizations or undermined their long-term effectiveness. As I discuss in my substantive chapter in our workshop volume, philanthropic giving has been one medium through which competition among diasporic elites takes place, particularly from those in different villages in rural Punjab. This has meant when one Bara Pin gets a fancy gurdwara or a hospital or a school or a village makeover, neighboring Bari Pin feel that their collective honor demands more of the same. On the one hand, this has been a spur to village development in the high migrant-sending central districts of Punjab. On the other hand, it can lead to inefficient allocation of resources, as some of the diaspora-rich areas of Punjab end up with more rural hospitals than they can support, while other areas with few diaspora donors go without. And these problems are only further aggravated when the state uses its scarce resources to subsidize these diaspora-funded projects. While the hospital and educational complex at Dahan Kalaran has not been itself threatened by insolvency, nearby rural hospitals built within the past 2 decades have had to close for lack of patients or staff. This focus on conspicuous philanthropy as a source of pride has had another side effect. It's tended to support highly visible philanthropic endeavors, particularly building projects and one-off shows, over less highly visible philanthropic endeavors, such as ongoing social service projects. Being able to put a donor plaque on every wall in public recognition of a diaspora donor might be an effective way of spurring donations in Punjab. But at Dazanbari, Budh Singh's desire to put resources behind yet more buildings, including a trauma center and ultimately a hospital, medical college, became a source of increasing tension between the trust and its international partners, who wanted to see the donor money allocated towards sustaining primary healthcare initiatives in neighboring villages, which didn't have a place to put the donor plaque on. Eventually, these differences in operational priorities helped undermine the Trust's relationship with UBC School of Nursing in its collaboration, and ultimately the ability of the Trust to pursue renewed funding with the Canadian International Development Agency. In addition, in the course of their collaboration, the Trust, with its Canadian affiliate and Canadian partners, in its relationship, the Canadian affiliate and Canadian partners brought to bear expectations for transparency, accountability, and consultative governance that were difficult for Budh Singh to deliver upon. As Margaret Walton Roberts notes, this contrast between Budh Singh's charismatic individual leadership style and Western management practices promoted by the Canadian partners raises important questions about tensions that can emerge for diaspora philanthropic organizations in aligning expectations of home and away. In the Trust's case, these tensions ultimately came to a head when Budh Singh's refusal to implement agreed-upon changes to operational practices caused the Canadian affiliate to back away and Budh Singh's fellow trustees to use the dispute as a pretext to vote him out of his presidency. Finally, one should note the gender dynamics that colored diaspora philanthropy in Punjab and played a part in undermining Budh Singh's position at the Trust. In Margaret Walton Roberts' words, quote, "Diaspora philanthropy works both to challenge and to perpetuate gendered norms within Punjabi society." In part motivated by his experiences in Canada, Budh Singh created a new opportunities for rural Punjabi females in starting this the first rural nursing college in Punjab. Yet ironically, in grooming a close female associate as his heir apparent and giving her significant power within the operation, ultimately undermined his support among his fellow all-male trustees, who resented a woman sitting on their heads and who, when they could not get Budh Singh to accept her dismissal, voted him out of office and took power for themselves. In conclusion, the case of Budh Singh Dahan, Guru Nanak Medical Mission Medical and Educational Trust, and the Medical and Educational Complex at Dazanbari illustrates some of the new directions in Sikh diaspora philanthropy, as in addressing needs not met by the state or the market. It moves beyond the Gurdwara to create a new space for civil society from which to address issues of social development through collective action by diasporic actors in transnational collaboration with international partners. At the same time, the case suggests some of the challenges that remain in developing and sustaining effective diaspora-inspired social development organizations in Punjab and reconciling the different development priorities, management styles, and cultural values of variously positioned stakeholders. Of course, this case study has touched on only a few of the issues raised by diaspora philanthropy in Punjab. In our book, we consider a range of other concerns, particularly over the effectiveness, sustainability, equity, local buy-in to these projects. And we ask the bigger questions about diaspora philanthropy as a development model. In particular, is diaspora philanthropy heroic and selfless service for the good of local people, as most philanthropists would have it? Or is it a neo-colonial endeavor imposing an outside development agenda, as some of its critics would claim? And in the wider scheme of things, is diaspora philanthropy a problematic neoliberal intervention that relieves the state of the responsibility of providing the public goods and services for its citizens? If we have time, perhaps we can address some of these big questions regarding diaspora philanthropy, as well as the specific issues that this case study has raised. Thank you.